Yeah. Alright, let's get the stream started. Streamers. Alright, I'm getting the stream up. I'm just doing some last minute.
Did we use the community edition?
Yeah, you want to use the community. Hold on. I'm just doing some last minute prep stuff to make sure everything's good on the stream and all that. Should be. Streamers can ping us if they can't hear anything, but they chose to stream, so it's danger. Okay. Alright, how was class on Saturday? Was it fun? Everyone have a good time?
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting, good. Anyone else? Anyone else? No? Rolando said interesting, so I'm going to take it as it was an interesting class, other than what I heard anecdotally from other people before class started. Anyway, we're going to go over more handlebars today. Handlebars with Express and Node. We're going to add some MySQL into it. We're going to be making full applications, basically. Full stack all the way through. Fist5, how are we feeling about handlebars so far? I know you guys haven't done too much. Feeling okay? Feeling okay? Okay. Well, we should get some more experience with it today, so hopefully we can fill in some of those holes in our knowledge that we may have. We are going to tell you your groups for Project 2 today. So, because I know Rolando requested that you guys know ahead of time so we can work together. So we're kind of like sorting that out now. And we'll pick those. And you guys can do what you want with that information. You can ignore them until Project 2 starts. Or you can sit with them and get used to them now. Whatever you want to do. I guess it'll be nice if you really hate someone in your group and you say this person's going to suck. You can tell us before it starts. And we can try to swap things around. We don't have a lot of leeway though. We pretty much have all even groups and we can't really move people. You know, if you have a problem with someone in your group and it's really not going to work, then we have to find someone else to kind of like willingly move. So it'll be tough. So I'm not saying that that will happen, but if you do sense that there will be a problem, that's okay. You can let us know and we'll try to work through it, help you work through it as best we can to make sure that Project 2 is nice and smooth. And we all have a good time. So we're going to start with a quick little exercise. Well, it's not really that quick, but anyway, we're going to have a Handlebars app, little Handlebars Express Node app, and you're going to basically recreate this functionality. So there's going to be 3 endpoints. One of them is going to be localhost 3000/dog, which is going to send information about a dog to the page, tell you that they are a pet, and that they are fierceness of 4. What is it out of? Who knows? But we'll find out. There's an all pets route, which has information about all the animals that are potential pets. In this case, a dog and also a cat, fierceness 10. Obviously, dogs are not fierce, but they don't have breed specifics on there. This is really, you know, kind of generalizing. I don't know. And then there's another route, all non-pets. Giraffe, zebra, and lion. Wow, I didn't know zebra were that fierce. They're almost as fierce as lion. That's cool. I'm going to take the scientific accuracy of this app in spades. Anyway, yeah, we have these 3 endpoints. Basically, we're just displaying some information in a list-like view with some HTML using handlebars. So obviously, you're going to have some get endpoints. You're going to have some HTML files. You're going to have your handlebar templates. You're going to have that view, that main master layout, stuff like that. Does anyone have any questions about this? This is activity number 6. You should have the unsolved in GitLab. And you're basically just going to edit the server.js and the dog.handlebars file and probably the index.handlebars file to recreate this functionality that I just showed you. You don't need MySQL for this one either. So if you don't have that set up yet, that's okay. We'll have some time. If you don't have any questions, go ahead and get started. Alex is locked out. Stephanie. I don't know where. He didn't say. Just said I am locked. Yeah.
That's a great place to start.
What's up, Alex?
You have to install an extension for GDE for the preview. Right click on file.
There might be a markdown extension to preview, but oh, is it built in now? Well, since you've been using it.
We've been using it, right. Because the preview will show you what your markdown looks like.
Yeah, it's real nice.
Nice to edit it before you upload it.
How about it?
got one drawn, it's so great. We need to put that in there. I think it's loose. Sorry, it's always
This isn't the solution. This is the unsolved code. So, don't think you're done yet. You're not.
So this will show you this code versus whatever. So this is all passes the object. Oh, what the heck? So this is an array of objects. So we're going to call animals. And then there's a and that's always going to contain This is from this one is like chest. I mean, those are also, you can't quantify how people do it anyways. I want to know. Yeah, like if you look at half the red is all idiots, and you see a bunch of them just.
And write PRM. PRM is something something like that. It basically can prevent you from changing the device. If you change your drive and you don't log into this app server, you don't drive, you don't sync your
So you have to do this. Okay, so they're using res, right? If you look here. Yeah. Dollar. Remember, direct res. So your plus is whatever the user does, and your all the responsibilities. So you're going to render. There's a bunch. Yeah, they have like little rain tree is just oh, that's rain tree. It's like walkable. What's it saying about we're here, what are you doing? Oh, okay, so we have to form this. So that's a basic function.
Something cool's going on out there, guys. In case you're wondering. I don't know. Sounds like people are zooming around.
Meetup out there?
Yeah.
Does this class have like a field trip?
There are no field trips in this class, no.
So, yeah, it's a field trip. You can go home. It'll be nice. You just gotta make it back here. They're like,
We have to wait like 6 minutes for it to shut off and put it back on. Yeah, check it out, guys. Oh, we have to write the next page. already looking at the enemies object that array that we're sending back. So what we want is the copy of the object inside. This is exactly how it's going. Right, so let's save everything and run the server and see what happens. So you have to save the server page. Oh, what's the Nicky method? If you turn this on to NodeMon on Saturday,
Nodemon, it's good stuff.
really good stuff. But, you should install it. Do npm-g NodeMon and install it locally. It restarts your node server for you every time, so you don't have to do it manually whenever you save the page. Whenever you save the server file, you just redeploy the file if you launch it with NodeMon. Install -g NodeMon. NodeMon. Yep. So now when you go to run your server, you instead of node in the server name, do NodeMon in the server name, and it will. Whenever you make a change and save, it will redeploy the node server. Install -g NodeMon.
Give you a couple more minutes, and then we'll go over this one together. Okay. How'd everyone do? Okay, bad?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, what particularly was difficult for you?
I almost got past the first part, trying to. I got that res.render, but then I couldn't get it to pop up in the handlebars file.
Okay, so you're getting the handlebars templates to match up with the data? Cool.
So,
Well, let's go ahead and walk through this together then. Let's start with the handlebars templates. What is going on here? Where? No. let's start with the handlebars files. We'll make those, and then we'll look at the code we need to hook it all up, right? So this first one, output the animal type string, the pet boolean, and the fierceness number to the page for all the pets. So with the handlebars itself, we don't want to do any of the logic in here. We pretty much just need to have a way to have a list of animals and display those properties about them. So what is the best HTML element for a list? UL, nice. It sure is. Or OL, yeah. Yeah, I mean, realistically, in a nice styled application, you get rid of that anyway. But yeah, OL would work here really well because we're not going to be styling it. So with handlebars, if you use the each directive, what it's going to do is when you have that render and you pass in data, you're going to give it a property that it's going to loop over like an array. So it's assuming that this property that you're going to put here is going to be an array. Now by property, I mean a value and an object that you're passing into the render function. Let me blow that up. Is that better? Okay, so for instance, we could call it animals, or even since this one is pets, we could call it pets. But let's keep it animals just in case we want to reuse this for the all pets and non-pets. And then the next thing you want to do right away is close the each directive, right? If you leave that open, you're going to get weird errors. It's going to be a real pain in the butt. So close, just like with your curly braces and all that, close it right away. So inside of UL, I assume we all know we need an LI. You can do other stuff, I guess, but it's weird, so don't do that. So the first thing we need is the animal type. Again, handlebars gives us a really nice, the mustaches, right? The double mustaches, the handlebars, whatever you want to call them, as the template specifiers. So everything in there is part of the template. So if we were to look at the animals that we're going to be passing in, they have animal type, pet, and fierceness. Those are the properties we want. And we don't need to do anything special with them. We just need to display them. Fierceness. Alright, so if you don't recall what the syntax is saying is we're going over each pet, or each animal, and this animal's assumably an array. And then inside of that, inside of the each directive, we now have access to the individual object, right? So if this is an array of animals, inside the each we have access to the animal's individual properties. So here, at the first one on type, we can print the animal type because that's one of the properties of those animals we saw. Pet, we have access to the pet property because that's another one. And fierceness, we have access to the fierceness property as well because we saw over in Server.js, those are the three properties of the individual animals. And that's all you have to do for this list one, right? Because we have access to, hopefully, these animals, we'll be able to take advantage of their individual properties inside of that each. Any questions on this handlebar syntax right here? Anything weird about it?
So that after that, the first each, the animals, can that be like anything theoretically?
What do you mean?
So has that hashtag each animals?
Yes.
Is that animals just a variable that could be like anything?
Anything you want, whatever you're going to call it in the object. So why don't we go ahead and build that path first? So let's just say for all pets, handlebars requires an object. We're going to send the animals to the index handlebars file. Animals an array. Animals is an array and not an object. And when we do the res.render, we have to pass it an object to be able to render it properly, right? So what we want to do is take all of the pets that are up here in our array, so everything with pet set to true, we're going to put it in its own object, and then we're going to pass it to the index handlebars, okay? So the first thing we need to do, we're going to just get rid of these comments. We can just create an object, call it data, okay? And we know we're going to have an array of animals. Like we've already discussed that. That's what we need in that each. We need an array of animals, correct? So let's go ahead. Excuse me. That was weird. let's go ahead and get all of the pets out of that array. So we can go ahead and do a for var pet of animals. We can go ahead and do the cool for each loop right here, right? This is cool. If pet dot pet, so maybe animal is a better. So we know this is an animal. If animal dot pet, we look up here, pet will be true. Then we can say data dot animals dot push animal. Now we have an object of animals that are indeed pets, right? So this is everything with pet true. This is where you call your res.render. You tell it the view that you want to render. In this case, it's going to be index because it's automatically going to find the handlebars. And then you just pass in the data.
That won't work, right?
This will work or won't work?
It won't work.
Why?
Because you called the object that you're supposed to be passing in animals in the page.
I called a property of the object I'm passing in animals. The object has no name. You don't reference the object by name here. You reference its properties. Yep, yep. Does that make more sense, Peyton? How that's working? So just remember, whenever you're passing into render for handlebars, you need to give it an object, and you can only use the properties of that object. You cannot use that object itself, right? You can't refer to that object. There's probably a way you can, but you don't need to, and you shouldn't plan on that. So we're always accessing properties, and then once you get inside of this each block, it's like scope, right? Imagine right here in my server.js where I did the if animal pet, you can imagine it's just like this. It's just this loop. It's exactly like this. I can get to each individual animal's properties. I can get to pet, type, fierceness, and all that stuff, right? It's the same thing, just displayed right here in this weird HTML like syntax. You just get like an implicit reference to that animal. You don't actually get to see the variable anymore, which makes it a little bit harder to like comprehend where this data is coming from, but that's where it's coming from.
So can you only do one res.render per like route?
Yes, you can only do one res.render per route because that's the same as doing a send or a JSON or an end, right? And remember, you can only do those once per route. Remember?
Yeah.
So it's the same concept. We're sending back, when we do the res render, it's the same as if we did a send. We pulled the data from the file system. Remember how we were loading manually the HTML files with the read file call? You're getting all that text back, and then it's doing something special. It's taking the data you're putting into the res render function, and it's finding special syntax in that text that it just read, and replacing it with information that you're giving it here, and then sending that up. We can actually build a really simple version of this in probably 15 minutes. It wouldn't be nearly as robust, but you could get the idea, right? So all it's doing is res render is saying, okay, we know that it's going to be a handlebars file. We know it's going to be in the views folder because we set that up at the top. You can see up here we have the default layout is main. It's a handlebars engine. It automatically defaults to the views folder. That's just the default value. So we know that there's an index.handlebar somewhere because you're passing in index to res render. It's going to be in the views folder. We're going to find it. We're going to find all of those weird handlebar brackets, right, inside of the handlebars data, and we're going to replace it with the data we're passing in through this data object. Then we're going to just send that back in a res.send. Make more sense?
Yep.
Cool. So if we do the same thing here for the non-pets, basically it's copy and paste. The only difference is we want to just push the things that are not pets. Right? Boom. Now we have all non-pets. Done. So the last one is dog. Good old dog. So for dog, we're basically just going to be printing the information about the dog. So in that case, we can literally just take this code right here, and just boom, dump it right here. And now we have properties of an individual animal, right? That we can get to because we're assuming the animal is the top level object, not this weird data thing. So now what we can do is literally res.render dog and animals 0. Because if we look at the top, dog is the first animal in the array. So we just tell it we're going to go to the dog handlebars file that it's going to find in that views folder with the handlebars extension. So it's immediately going to do a read file into here. Okay, dog, it's just going to add handlebars. We set up handlebars as the extension right here. It's going to literally just add .handlebars to the end, read file, and then it's going to replace those templates with our dog. Theoretically, this should work unless I seriously mess something up, which is very possible. I do that from time to time. So if we go ahead and go in here, let's do our npm install. And let's do our node server.js. It is listening on localhost 8080. For some reason, it's different. Alright, so all non-pets seems to come up correct. Let's go to all pets. Seems to come up correct. Let's go to dog. Gotta love dog. Yep. Any questions on this code? Did that clarify anything with handlebars for you guys? We can really boil down the functionality to a few simple things. When you call res render, it's doing a read file. It's appending that extension for you. Like, it's doing a lot of things for you that it's all right here in front of your face, but it's hard to realize because you don't see what res render is actually doing. So you set it all up and you're like, okay, great, I got to set up, but how is this actually working? Well, it's taking all that information that you've registered with Express already and doing it all at once. So again, we are registering right here with this app engine that handlebars is the extension we're going to use. Okay? Express defaults to the views folder from your root to look for your views. In the res render, it's going to take that first word you put into render and it's going to add dot handlebars to the end. It's going to do a read file in the views folder. Okay? It's going to find dog.handlebars, read it in, get the text. Then it's going to take the object that you're passing in as the second parameter. It's going to read its properties. It's going to see if those properties exist with the same name in handlebars. It's going to replace the data in the handlebars template with your object. And then it's going to just res.send status 200 out into the ether. And there you go. You have your view engine, right? So there's not a lot to it. Now, handlebars obviously does a whole lot more behind the scenes than just that, but if you wanted to make a simple one, you could do it by hooking into the Express stuff and just doing like a simple regex or just a text replace over some data and you'd get the same thing. Alright, any other questions on how handlebars works, how any of that works? Making sense? How are we feeling now on handlebars? Feeling a little bit better? Getting a little bit better? Well, we'll see a few more examples like this, so it'll give us time. I'll go ahead and Slack out those solutions really quick. So you got them. Boom, boom. Let's go to week 14. Activities. What is this? Handlebars. Handlebars unsolved. They don't really make this easy. Alright, there's one. Now let me do the views. Alright, so there should be the solution that we just wrote together. So you can reference that later. And we'll go ahead and move on if no one else has any other questions. It's all good. Cool. Alright. So, one of the things we've played with so far, but we've not really talked a lot about, are these HTTP verbs, these HTTP methods, get, post. Those are the two we've really spent a lot of time with. There are a few others that you'll come to use pretty regularly. Put is another one, and delete. So far, we already kind of got the idea that a GET request, HTTP GET, is just used to get data. literally that's in the name, right? Get something. A post is generally used to create new data. It doesn't have to be, but generally speaking, it is used to create new data. There's another one called a put, very similar to a post. It has the same kind of functionality to it where you send it some data as like a JSON body. And a put is used to update data. And then there's the delete, which you can all assume is to delete data. There's a couple others too that you might use eventually. There's one called head, and there's one called patch. They're similar, but don't really get into them too much because until you get more sophisticated with your REST APIs, they're not necessary. And you can do most of the stuff you need to do with these 4 different HTTP verbs. Anyway, I just said something. I said when you get sophisticated with your REST APIs, we've not talked about REST in this class and what it is. REST stands for Representational State Transfer. I'm pretty certain. Yes, Representational State Transfer. It's not really that important what it stands for. Just note that REST you're going to see a whole lot in the web development community. And I'm going to slack out some resources for you when I'm done talking, but first I want to talk a little bit about it. So, as the web became more prolific in our daily lives and more web servers started to come about, people started developing less just static content and more of these web APIs. And with that, we came across a whole slew of problems. How do we standardize APIs? One of the standards that came out of this was called REST. Basically, the idea behind REST is we have a nice clean pattern for how you should use these HTTP verbs to access and change data on your servers, right? It's not super important that you totally understand best practices of REST and that you're like on the ball. Yes, this is how you should absolutely do a put. You should never create new content in a put, those kinds of things. It's not terribly important, but it is good to know about because the better you are at building very strict REST services, the more other people will like you when they use your APIs. Because they're easy to understand when they're done correctly, but almost no one does it correctly. So what exactly is it? It's just the standard of information about how you should build your endpoints on your API. That's literally all it is. And there's a ton of information about that. One of the things, just going down this list, there's a uniform interface, right? So starting with get, post, put, and delete. So like I said earlier, a GET request is just to get data. Does it have to be? No. You could technically in your GET request create data or do something weird, right? But if you think about it, a GET request, it's literally getting data. All it should do is get data. The idea behind that is if I make a GET request, I can be certain, 100% certain that none of the data on my server is changing. If I do the same GET request again over and over, I should get the same data every time. It's called idempotency, and it basically means when you have a function and you put in inputs x, you'll always get output y. Same input of x will give you the same output of y every time. That's not the only definition of idempotency. I've gotten into very academic arguments about it that were way overblown, and I did not understand why they happened, but they did because programmers are irritating like that. But just know that a GET request, it's best practice in a GET request that you only retrieve data and send it back. You cannot send a body, a JSON body, through a GET request. It's not considered good practice. You probably can, but you shouldn't expect it. Your server won't expect it, right? Your server will be like, what are you doing? And sometimes the server might actually explode if you do that. So it's not a safe thing to do. Then there's your post. We want to create new data, right? So this is literally for, I have no data, I want something brand new. So say we wanted to create an animal in this interface we just built. You might have a post to an API/animals, right? And in that sense, it's going to take in a whole new JSON object. It's going to turn that into an animal, and then maybe return some information to you. Maybe return the animal's ID. Maybe return the fully constructed animal back. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is the animal that you're creating with that post did not exist. And if you try to create the same animal again, you won't. You'll create another animal with similar properties, right? So you can think about your auto increments on your database. If you try to do a post with the same information, you're not going to change the last animal. You're literally going to be creating a new one with a new ID that's been auto-incremented. That's how you can think about a post. Then there's a put, P-U-T, right? The put is different because you're updating the information. So a put request might have required ID in the route, right? So we can have a API/animal/dog name or something, right? And that could be a parameter. You send in the dog name, it'll look for the dog name in the database and send you back the dog. With a post, you wouldn't have /API/animals/dog name because you'd be assuming, again, that this is brand new. We don't know the dog's name necessarily. We don't know how to find the dog on the server. We're creating a new dog. But with a put, we are going to be taking the existing dog and changing it. So say we have our dog Lassie, and we decide Lassie's a terrible name. We adopted Lassie, and we're changing it to Joe. We're going to update Lassie. We're going to go to API/dog/10, whatever Lassie's ID is, send in a new JSON body that has the new information you want with Lassie, and it's going to change Lassie in the database and send you back information about what you just did. The put request is just to do updates. Basically, if I send in information X, when I call a put, I should get the server should look exactly the same no matter how many times I call that, right? If I send in the same data, because we're updating a record, we're not creating anything. That's theoretically how it should be. It is almost never that way, actually, in a real API, so don't expect it, but that's how it should be. And then a delete request is exactly what you can imagine, where you send in a delete request and something's going to be gone, assuming you found a resource, so you shouldn't expect that to happen multiple times. That's just what it is. So it's not required ever in an API that you make it totally RESTful. But it is, like I said, it's a really good practice. And if you really understand what REST is, how to properly build REST APIs, how to architect them, you're going to save a lot of people a lot of heartache when they use your APIs, because they'll be able to read the docs or whatever you have, and then they'll eventually just be able to get it, right? So you could say, here's an example endpoint. Say we have API/dog, and we have dog get, dog post, dog put, dog delete, right? And they all work exactly as you should imagine, and then you release a new API endpoint cat. Well, if you are doing a good job, and we can assume so far that you've done everything in the best practices of REST, we can assume the same for cat, and I know how to use cat already. I don't need you to tell me how to do it. I just know how to do it, right? Because you did a good job following the standards. So that's kind of the advantage of doing it. People can infer how it's supposed to work, and it will. So that's good news. There are a lot of resources for helping you learn REST because it can be in depth. There's more to it than what I just said. I mean, you can get more into how exactly you should format requests and stuff like that. What status codes you should use. What does a stateless service mean? How do you cache? Stuff like that, right? So there's actually quite a bit to it. This is one of the resources that I'm going to Slack out to you. There's a couple others too. There's RESTfulapi.net. I haven't vetted all of these. So the REST tutorial one that I just showed you was one that Trilogy recommends. So this one's supposed to be okay. This one's the one I found. Might be helpful, I don't know. There's good old Wikipedia that I'll link out to you as well. I want you to, we'll eventually spend time checking these out. Wikipedia is going to be harder to understand, it always is, but it's a good one. And then there's the king of REST articles, in my opinion. I like this one a lot, but this one is a little bit deeper into the guts. And this is a post by a pretty well-respected architect, software architect named Martin Fowler about the levels of REST. So this one goes really in depth into REST and past what I talked about significantly. But it's a good article if you want to get down that path. So I'm going to Slack those out in a moment. Actually, I'll Slack them out right now. Does anyone have any questions on REST and how you use REST and what is REST, or any other random questions about this that you might have that I probably glossed over because I'm sure there's plenty of stuff I did? Yeah, Kyle?
Is there a big difference between REST and RESTful?
No, that's the same. So a REST API should be RESTful, right? Or your API should be RESTful. So yeah, it's a buzzword you'll hear. Do you know how to build RESTful services? Yeah, I'm not an idiot. I can Google it too. So that's really what it comes down to. When you're building your API, make sure you Google best practices of REST so you can adhere to them and you don't forget any little details, right? You'll hear that one a lot. Any other questions on REST and how it might work? Cool. I'm going to Slack out some of these resources. I want you to spend 5-10 minutes kind of reading over them, getting an idea of what REST is. Maybe talk to the people around you, try to figure some stuff out if you have any questions about it. Think about how it compares to what we've done so far. And how, do you think our services we've built so far are technically RESTful, even though we've only done a little bit of work? Technically, are they RESTful? It's quite possible. So, spend some time too. Yeah, Justin?
Later, when you get a chance.
Oh.
I want to talk to you about what they asked me to do. Clarify that.
Bar's fine. We'll get into that later. Yeah, if you want to use that bar.
First web service and then get it to the
Bar.
explaining why the web works the way it
Yeah,
works.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty smart.
So bar is fine. Unless you know how that works, I would stick to just bar.
Okay, yeah, that's what I said. I mean, it's.
Okay. That's fine. So Daniel, I guess, said on Saturday to start using let instead of var. They're interchangeable, so you can. The only difference is let has stricter scoping rules, so it's safer. So people do prefer in the real world to use let instead of var. So that's fine if you do. They should be interchangeable. You might run into some weird thing if you're taking advantage of shadowing and stuff. If you're doing that, you're just going to find out that that was a no-no and you shouldn't have. So, yeah, so if you have like var a equals 10 and then further down you have var a equals 11 or something and you like it's called shadowing. Or you have weird scope things you're taking advantage of with the shadowing. You can't do that with let. Let is scope specific. Hoisting too. So you could be like a equals 12 and then var a down below, like initialize it later. You can't do that with let. So quirky things that you shouldn't do anyway, you can't do with let. So yeah, let is safe. Also, another one, if you initialize a value and you're not going to change it, use const instead. So for instance, if I create an object and I'm just changing the property values of that object, use const. Don't use let. Because that I don't know what you're saying, but it sounded snarky.
That's exactly what I said.
Sounds about right. You wouldn't be the first one to say that.
Model developed by
Oh, interesting. That's the same person as in this one.
Wait, really?
What do you mean probably the same one?
We got a different one.
It's the same one.
Yeah,
That's a model used by leaders.
That's not the end.
Leader. Is it an name?
Oh,
It's not.
we own our.
It's not leader. Say it again?
What? It's Leonard. No, it's Rick Hardson.
I know it's Richardson. I'm gonna click on Korean so what it looks like. It's Korean.
Nice.
What's Korean?
Yeah, you're allowed 4 streams and 4 absences. Oh, really? I don't know, I don't want to do it. You're allowed 4. Like, just put it up with you. I only use like 1/4 of all my.
The last two.
Taking off on that season.
Like the hardest
You
one.
can see like a fishing pole and $68. I don't know if it's not the other thing, so it actually works.
Exactly right.
All right, how you guys feeling about REST? We all understand REST. We're REST experts these days. We know what's going on. Yeah. Who can tell me what a put request is for then?
Add new data.
Add new data. The put request is updating data. Why didn't they call that CRUD? I didn't invent the internet. I don't know. I didn't invent HTTP. I can't help you. I have no idea. I really don't know why they chose those words. They just did. There's probably some history to it. You can, I'm sure, Google it and find out. Yeah. Well, I don't think that the put post and all that, I don't think they were technically meant to be one-to-one with CRUD. I think we kind of did that because people do those kinds of things. Like, oh, well, might as well make this one our update. Might as well make this one, one's called delete. That's delete, right? Get and read, effectively the same word, right? The put and the post are the only two that are really kind of odd there. And they have to do with, like, the entity information and your body, your request bodies and stuff. So there might have been a natural correlation to, like, oh, yeah, well, of course the post is going to be a create, duh, but I don't know why that would be. I don't know the history of it, so it just is that way now. Does anyone have any questions on this stuff before we move on? We're going to go over another exercise together, kind of talk about it together before we look at some more stuff. So, nope, no more questions? Okay. Well, if you have any questions on REST or any of the HTTP verbs or whatever we're doing, then by all means ask. All right. So we have here activity number 7, and you can all do this with me. You can watch. It's really up to you. We're going to start using MySQL with our handlebar stuff. So you get this MySQL schema. Go ahead and open up your workbench if you're going to do this. And you'll want to connect your default connection. Just connect, damn it. And you will want to copy that SQL schema information, boom, into Workbench and run it. I already did that, but we have a task server. You're going to get a tasks table in the task server. It's going to have a couple columns. It's going to have an ID and a task. Real simple. ID's auto increment. The task is going to be just a varchar 255, right? 255 characters possible. Non-nullable, nothing crazy. So do follow along if you'd like, but you don't have to. So say we've got that all set up in your server.js. The only other thing you're really going to have to do is make sure that your connection information is set up to be your connection information. Feel free to take this very secure username and password and try it. It won't get you very far. But anyway, once you do that, you should be able to npm install like always. Once that's good, you should be able to do node server.js. See listing on 8080 connected and get the connected as ID whatever, right? It's going to change every time. But once you got that going, we can take a look at our sweet Tasks app. Tasks app. Oh, it's hard to say fast. So on localhost 8080, we have a few tasks that exist in this list. Basically what we've got is an app that has a GET request to go ahead and get data from the server to display this HTML page, right? And then we have a POST request to create new tasks. Teach about REST. And boom, there you go. It updates. We've got Teach about REST. It's fantastic. Look at how beautiful this app is. Right? It's great. That's the gist of the functionality. There's not a whole lot on the UI side. We're going to have one HTML template with handlebars, and then we're going to have, we'll have our main layout, of course, and then we're going to have some code. So why don't we take a look at that. So like I said, we have our typical setup here with Express, nothing crazy. We set up the default ports. We set up our URL encoded with Express and our Express JSON, so we can get in JSON, we can get in form content, all that good stuff. We set up Express handlebars, make sure that's all set up, and then we use the MySQL package. We gotta go back to that bad boy. Set up your connection, and bam, you're ready to rock, right? This last step right here, remember, you just verify that the connection works by calling the .connect function. Once you know that it's working, we're good, we can move along. Alright, so we've got a few routes. We have a get route, and what's going to happen with this one is before we send back the HTML, we're actually going to query the database. So we have connection query, we're just selecting everything from the tasks table. So remember, that's an ID and a task. That's it. We're going to get it back in our callback, we're going to call it data right here. And then we're just literally dumping data into this other object. We're calling them the tasks. Do we have to do that? No, but our handlebars template is going to be referencing the tasks. So why don't we look at the handlebars template for the index.handlebars file. So this is that task server. We have a nice H1 tag. We have an H3 tag. Tell you a little bit about what this app does. Allows you to create tasks. That's cool. We have that each again that we just saw. Each on the tasks. So if I split this so you can see the code that's going to call it, you can see right here, bless you. Here are the tasks. We get them back from the database directly. We sign with that task variable. And right over here, here are the tasks. You can see exactly where they line up, right? Inside of this, each block, we are referencing the ID and the task property of the task. Now notice in this case, slightly different. They're actually using this. Remember what this does with an object? a whole bunch of crazy stuff. But it also lets you get to the properties, right? So we're referencing the properties of the each task individually. We're putting them in an unordered list. Each one will be its own list item. P tags for the ID and the task, just like what we saw. And then from there, we'll actually create a form. And this form is going to have a post method. It's just going to go back to the empty path, right? Your main path slash. It just has one input element, a text area. What does the text area allow us to do? Enter a bunch of lines, right? It's just more text than an input box. It lets you resize it sometimes. It's real nice. And then just a submit button. So not a whole lot going on this HTML page. Really the only substance we have is this each block with handlebars. Because that's going to be re-rendered dynamically every time we add a task, right? The form is nice too. We've done forms a lot, but now we have to pay attention to the method, which we never had to pay attention to really before because we didn't have our own API, and the action. If we were just doing front-end stuff, you can't really pay attention to that. You don't have to sometimes, right? And when we get to React, again, we'll just ignore those because we won't want to post back. But for now, you want to post back. So we go ahead and we go to localhost 8080. It comes in, it does this GET request, which is just going to get data from the database, render it into that index HTML, and send it on back to us. It's going to load it all up in that beautiful, well-styled list that we all saw and were in awe of. And then we can go ahead and add new task information. Once you enter in the information about the task, you just go ahead and hit submit, and we end up in this post request. Boom, post. This is the guy right here. This is him. Look, here's our action, right? It literally matches character for character. The action right here. I know. It's crazy. Craziness. And then the method post. Boom. Right here with the post. Also insanity. This is how it works in the real world. And in this one, we're not just updating data. We're not just getting data, we are creating new data altogether. So we have an insert statement. We're going to insert tasks, the task value into tasks, which have a little question mark here. And then we pass in the rec.body.task, which is coming from the text area's name. So the name on the text area element is actually being put into an object that request uses in the rec.body. So if you have a big long form with a bunch of properties, or a bunch of inputs, and you give them all names, they're going to be referenced right here in Express in rec.body. It's pretty simple to get to them, which is really nice. So we'll pass them in. It'll just do the insert. We're all good to go. And then we call this res.redirect. Has anyone used the res.redirect? Have we used that before? No. Res.redirect's nice. What it's going to do is say, okay, instead of sending you back some data or something, we're actually going to tell you to redirect a GET request back to this path. In this case, the path is just the slash. So what does that do? It sends us back here, loads the tasks again, and we start it over. It's the circle of life. It's beautiful.
Does it actually refresh the page when you do that?
The form refreshes the page, right? So when you do a form submit, it'll refresh the page, which, well, after it gets a response back, it would. But this response is telling it to refresh anyway, so yeah.
Do you need the photo there when you get stuff ID?
No, you don't need this.id. You could just do ID and task.
Right.
Yep.
What would be
No, I don't think there's really an advantage. It's just if you want to type this every time, go for it. If you have like maybe if you have certain things you want to access, you might need to use this, but I don't know. I'd have to look at the particulars of handlebars. I haven't used it enough to tell you. So any questions on how this works from top to bottom? This is the whole kit and caboodle, right? This is from database to dynamic HTML, like serious stuff. You can build production level, very nice, high quality applications that people will use that are scalable and everything with just these three things: the Express server, handlebars, and MySQL. Absolutely, you can. People do it. They're all powerful enough to work together to do anything you need to do. Most definitely. You have all the tools now. You even know about REST, so you can make your APIs good.
handlebar, express, and then
Node and Express, so technically 4. So this is very similar to the MERN stack that we're ultimately going to learn, right? Which is Mongo, Express, Node, and React, or React and Node. This is this is MySQL, Express, handlebars, and Node. So the MEN stack.
I like that name.
Yeah, you like that? This is the MEN stack. Oh Lord. All right. Anyway, does anyone have any questions on this application? Any questions at all? What I want you to do is take activity 7. I want you to work with people around you, add some other endpoints to it maybe. Understand how this works. Set up with your MySQL, run the SQL commands to get the schema going, add some tasks, maybe add a delete button to them. That'd be really cool. Figure out how that works. Just play with it. Get really familiar with the get and the post and how this all works together as one entire app for the next 15 minutes or so.
That's the same thing. I couldn't remember my password. So I've checked every single one. Yeah. I couldn't remember it, so I tried every single one. And so that's someone that found it. It's like a abbreviation of something. It was.
Wow. Mother of God.
Mother of God.
You should see their meetup out there. I think they started a bonfire out there too.
They get pretty rowdy over
It's like
there.
78 degrees. It's not that cold.
It's a bunch of like usually 15 and 16-year-olds will hang out.
Yeah, got Durham, man.
Yeah. My mom just bought me a car. I'm sick, man.
I'll buy you a Cummins. I'll buy Durham, man.
That's all mine. I changed its password and I forgot.
Why, in the server code, why is the insert into tasks in parentheses?
Because when you do an insert statement, you have to specify the values you're inserting first by name.
Right.
So we're inserting the task value, and this first one is going to be the representation of that task value. So it's kind of confusing because the table is called tasks, and the value is task instead of like notes or something.
Right, okay. Are the parentheses required?
Yes.
Even for the question mark?
Yes.
Because when you do the percent, it's not-
We probably did the set equals or whatever.
Yeah.
Different syntax. This is traditional SQL syntax for insert. The other one is MySQL specific. So if you try to do the other one on any other provider, it'll explode and you'll go, what? So
is that task in the parentheses patched from the text area? Like that has the name task?
So this task is the value in the database. So if I open the database, you'll see one of the fields is task, right? So you can see right here, this is the same thing. Let's see if I can expand it. Literally, the varchar field on the database table is called task, right? So it's saying for the new record we're creating in the tasks table, we're going to be inserting a task value, and here in this question mark is replaced with what we have here. So this is the content coming from the web page, right?
So where are those forms that always confuse me? I don't know why.
The forms, what about them?
I don't know, just like how it like refreshes all the time. Or, like, I don't know. Basically, so when you do the form, like action post, and you're posting it to the root directory or whatever, and then you have the request and the response. That'll just be the response for whatever you type in the text area, right?
What you type in the text area will be in the request body.
Oh, okay.
The response is what comes back from the server. The request is what goes to the server. And remember, when we do a submit on the form, we're sending information to the server, right?
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you run this code if you haven't already. Try to set breakpoints, console logs, whatever you got to do to get an understanding of how this is working.
So we're gonna take the numbers in the box. You're gonna put the number that you want to delete and then put the delete button. Yeah, button's not close. I was just gonna ask you if you ever heard of like SQL injection.
SQL injection attack?
Yeah. So I don't know. I tried looking up how to do it like a long time ago, but I never like understood like SQL before that. I guess. I don't know. I was just wondering if you knew like anything about it.
See if I can do it.
Because I went to this website that shows if your website basically is vulnerable to SQL injection attacks.
Mm-hmm. So right here we have our test server. Let's see if I do delete from tasks. Ooh, it didn't work. So the MySQL package has SQL injection protection in it already.
Oh.
But you can see right here this task I did semicolon delete from tasks semicolon. So what it would do if you didn't have any SQL injection prevention is it would do semicolon, it would end the current statement I'm on. I would do delete from tasks, it would delete them all, and the semicolon would end that statement, and then the rest would be invalid. So it would run my statement and be like, cool, man, that's all good.
Yeah.
But I think there might be problems anyway, it might explode, so...
You can only... Like, I only have one post per route, right?
One post per route? Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you can't do multiple requests in a single... You can't do like multiple HTTP verbs in a single request. And a route... Technically, since they share the same path, you can have all of the verbs in one path, right? They're different verbs, so they're supposed to do different things.
So... Is there a way to, like, pull data from the request to see what button was clicked?
No. You'd have to have some information telling you that.
Well, the button has a name, right?
The button will have a name, but the button, you can give the button a name, but I don't think that'll come through on the request. Not the button. Only, like...
Or the type. Well, I guess type has to be submitted, right? Because that's how you send it.
Yeah. So you would have to manually send that in with, like, jQuery or something and say, oh, this is the button. You could put a hidden form element on there. You can't do that. You can give it a value, but it would just be what it prints in the button. So if you had an input element set to type hidden, and you gave that a name, then you could identify it, right? Because you can't see that on the form, but that would come in anyway. So that would be like your identifier. You'd be like, this form's name is whatever, and then you could track it that way if you wanted. What in particular were you thinking of?
Adding a delete function. So I just added a delete button, and then you put the number of the ID that you want to remove from the list in the same text box, and then hit delete instead of submit. And if you hit delete, the post will see that and then run a query to delete that ID.
Well, how about this right here? You know what the ID is. You could create a hidden element or something that had the ID associated with it, and then you could either have jQuery to select it or something like that, right? So you effectively need jQuery to do this properly, or some for JavaScript to do delete properly. You can't just like do it like a post. What's up?
There's an error one that says
That means you already have something running on that port. So make sure all of your other projects are stopped.
Make sure you check the port right, because like if you checked in 0808 instead of 8080.
Yeah, you won't go to the right one. Does anyone have any questions on this? On anything that's going on here? Any of this code right here?
how do you close a port out of the
You have to find the process that's running and kill it. So if you closed whatever terminal is running it, for some reason it's still live, you got to find it in like the task manager to kill it. I'll help you in a moment if you don't figure it out. So I said we were gonna set up the groups for the next project. So Stephanie will Slack those out so you can take a look at them. But we can take a 15-minute break. Come back at like 8:10, I guess 17-minute break. And we'll get going again. So you'll know your groups and be able to go from there.
I guess the easiest way to do it here without jQuery would probably just be make another form and put that button as delete instead.
You could try to do like a mini form inside the list element with the button. If you can pass the delete method through form, which you probably can.
Put like another form under the submit form.
The problem with that is you need to know what one you're trying to delete, right? So if you have a way to select which one you want to delete.
Right, but then so what I was thinking is you put the number of the ID in that form, and then when you send it back, and you have the name of the form be something else, when you test the body of that form,
yeah,
you can run the query off that data.
Yeah, just do a second form. We'll do the easiest. Do it in the same group you are. Did you figure it out? How many instances of code do you have over?
Just
Yeah, have any other terminals? Then just close this window. And you can open it up again to see if it's fixes the
I
problem.
like that solution, just put it in.
Kill everything and see if it.
Some stuff you say like that is it's like simple like yeah, I'm not clear. Like close the whole thing. That makes sense.
Just tricks the trade in there.
It's something that part of the one people about.
Okay, so close this. Open up your task manager for me.
go to more details. Scroll down and find node. I'm sure it's gonna be there. Oh, there's the little bastard. Kill that. Just delete it. Now it should be good. Nice. See, I like that one better. I knew it would do it.
You got it.
Yeah, it works like that. Just added another form and like.
And give it the delete action instead.
Yeah, I did in the post. I did a if rec.body.add because I changed the name from cast to add.
Mm.
If it's true, then run the connection to insert, and then I did one if body.delete is true, run the delete query instead.
I see.
And I just added another. I just copy pasted the form and changed the name of it.
I see, I see. Nice work, man. Good job figuring it out.
It's close though.
Well,
There's a cheap workaround. Yeah, but I guess because we don't have like cheap query and all that fancy stuff.
yeah, I mean, the alternative is to just have two forms and have the action be delete. And it might work.
Yeah.
I've never done that, so.
Yeah, just send back only the name of the form with the properties inside.
Man, it is a party out there. We are missing out. We should, class is canceled. We're all gonna go hang out with those kids.
With do shout outs.
Yeah, it's gonna be sick.
Is there a way to like re-index your secret table
Yep.
so that the next time you add something like it, oh, you said you had something.
Well, you mean like get rid of breaks in the numbers and stuff?
Like have your run a query to re-index your table so that all the IDs are without space.
You'd have to reinsert them into a new table with auto increment.
Gross.
You can re-index the table, but that does not do what you think it does. It rebuilds the index. It does not change the auto increment counter.
Oh.
They're separate. They're not related. It just so happens that we usually have our primary index on the auto increment field because it's very convenient and very efficient. So that's my explanation.
Yeah, after that, like, I deleted the last one and I added another one, so now it's like 79. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't scare me this time, though. I was expecting it. What are you using to replace chemicals or
Eventually we'll go to React.
React?
Yeah. Yeah, but not for most of our actual production has to go with React. But we had stuff that we just in terms of like dynamic HTML rendering, I would say Handlebar by far the best. So if you're gonna go with standard like HTML, not the single page app, I would say that. But I lost it.
Multi-page application services. You said single page is good for handlebars.
No. Other way around. If you're doing a traditional web page like we are, Handlebar. If you're doing a single page app, you use like React or Angular. But in terms of a lot of traditional web development, though, I would say is usually done in like C# or Java. So you've got either Razor pages in C# or whatever Java Spring equivalent is. I don't know what it's called. I'm sure it's something like that. So.
Maybe you will in like 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now.
Can you all believe we have less than 10 weeks left?
No. I want you to go.
Okay. Thank you.
I told Stephanie, she told me just to let you know.
Okay. Less than 10 weeks left. It would be beginning of January-ish that we would be done if we didn't have Christmas and all the holidays and stuff.
Stupid cheeses.
I know. God.
It's Ron Mithras' birthday, man. He's born in spring.
Sometime in April or something. I don't know. What was that?
4 weeks to the tennis project.
Yeah, 4 weeks of tennis. It might even be more than that. I think Project 3 is like 2.5. Almost 3 weeks. So we really only have like at most 6 weeks left of content. So we have Sequelize next week, 2 weeks of project, and then we go, I think it's just straight Mongo, React, like data structures, and then final project. So like it is balls to the wall after Thanksgiving. It's like, it's the phases though. So how did this phase of the class compare to the first phase, which was before project? Which one was more difficult?
Well, definitely weeks 1.
The CSS.
Yeah, I was gonna say week CSS and raw HTML is pretty rough if
Yeah,
you
so
don't know the syntax.
I feel like this week you get or this section you get a little bit more of your bearings together, so you kind of get a better idea of the environment. It may not be easy content, but it's not like you're totally thrusted in this brand new world. You have an idea of what's going on, and then the final section is like way harder. So
It's easier. At least it feels a little bit easier now because we know more syntax. We've been working with it more.
yeah.
So now all we're doing is just changing how we use it.
Yep. Yeah, so Mongo I don't think is ever really a big deal for anyone. When we do Mongo, it's like it's another database. It's kind of weird, but it works really, really well with nodes, so it's super easy to use, which is really nice. And then React is so different from anything else we've seen in this class that it throws people through a loop, especially the first week. That is a tough week. People usually leave like, I don't know what the fuck we just
For
did.
React.
Yeah. But we have 2 weeks of it, thankfully, and then I'm going to probably talk to Dan about just completely chopping off the random language week and just being like, dude, let's just teach more React or something, because it's pretty important. Or TypeScript or something like that. That's a little bit more relevant. But it's good. It's crazy that we're that far along already. It's really not that much left.
Do your are your streams, let's say,
They're all on YouTube. I don't know how long YouTube keeps them there, but yeah. Stay forever, yeah.
I'm gonna watch this Saturday on Monday probably.
Saturday, I don't. Next week, honestly, I really feel like they can cut the whole week. Sequelize is a pointless week to me. I kind of bummed out about it.
Yeah. What's it?
It's an ORM, so it wraps MySQL, and it allows you to do things like use functions to create your SQL queries instead of writing the SQL by hand. You can be like, dot join, and then the table name, and then dot find and stuff, and it like returns an object and stuff. So it's a little nicer, but
Not a critical class.
no. If you use, I will be really surprised if you use SQLize that much in production. Stuff like it you'll use, but SQLize itself.
I guess you would use the Java classes to actually write the queries, or the .NET classes to write the queries.
Depends. Some people use Entity frameworks, so they don't write any queries.
That's what I mean. You would use the framework within Java or .NET to actually generate the queries.
Yeah, sometimes. We do a lot of queries by hand still at work, but a lot of people do use them.
So you have a different name in the letter here is just checking if the request, if the body of the request that comes back for add is true, then run this query. And then if not, run it, and then if the request body from delete is true, it's like this is add. Most methods will see the body delete is true, so it has something run this query. Take the whatever items they take out, and then run the query on it.
So your groups are all out there. Take a look at them. I don't know what you're going to do about that information yet, but it's there. Project 2 is all of the stuff we learned. You get to do it. Yep. I'm sure you're going to have a MySQL database. You're going to have to use handlebars. You're going to have to do all that. Express. You'll probably, you'll have to deploy to Heroku. And then I'm sure they'll be like, oh, use 2 new tick or something crazy like that. You're going to make a friend finder app?
Yeah. Are we going to have class periods to work on it?
When are you gonna figure out?
It's pretty much going to be the 2 weeks. Just like
With Kyle.
Alright, what we gotta figure out. So we did, what did we do last time? Capital. So we gotta do like.
The next level. I'm in.
It's Olympus Mons.
Troll our instructions with our
He's got like 8 options. Troll, snooze. You track my weight.
Alright, boys.
what is going on?
For good old
We're going to have to pick your projects now. Jeez.
For good old times. Oh, it didn't work?
Oh, beautiful. All right, let's get started on class again. I know you're all chomping at the bit to get started on project 2, it seems, but we're not going to do that yet. Okay, so we are going to be building an app called the Wish Saver, which looks very suspiciously like something we just looked at. And as a matter of fact, it's almost identical to the Task app. Who would have thought? The only difference is I wish for a working app. Oh, that didn't even work. Oh my god. The only difference is you're saving wishes instead of tasks, and you don't get any of the code. You have to build it all by hand. So we are basically going to be spending the next 15 minutes or so building this. So MySQL schema, you got to come up with that all by yourself. You got to connect to the database, create the handlebar templates, set everything up by hand yourself. Now, you happen to have a sample application that is effectively the same thing, but I'm not going to tell you to use that. I'm just saying it's there. So anyway, that being said, go nuts. If you have questions, let us know. Oh, you guys are late. We started the next app.
Did you hear that train?
I did. I heard the train.
It was like 10 times louder.
Well, yeah.
It's like
You're outside. It's not that it's 10 times louder outside, it's just that's full volume. Inside is less volume.
I was looking at my brother and shit, and the train comes.
Trains are so confident.
The train's like, yeah, I got balls. I was just looking at the train.
Yes. You're building effectively the same thing that we just went over, but by yourself. Well, from scratch. You can do it with your friends if you like.
Looks like the same code as the last one.
It pretty much is. So go ahead and use that code as a baseline or as an example if you'd like.
Either that or you do that. No, that's terrible. You don't save your code, just get wrecked.
Like, I forgot my charger on Saturday, and my computer literally died at like 1.
Yeah, you made it.
Yeah, and you only had 65% when we started.
I forgot my charger got too.
That's a Mac for you. Those things don't drain.
My charger was like twice.
If I forgot my charger, class would be canceled because my laptop's battery drains fast. Especially when I'm recording and streaming. I've probably got 40 minutes of battery at that case.
I got like 1 second if my camera bugs. I got like battery problems. So don't play that trick on Peyton.
So that's how I know it's not even getting you.
Wait, that's last. Oh, it's last.
Actually gets more equipment. And actually, no, I use the, So I set up those
I told you when I was going in, you just kept standing up to
so
it.
then, well, before that,
Oh my god.
I set up this foot is not working.
You have a slack forward.
Oh, God. I know that, I'm just saying. So I see what you got, so I would have, okay, so I would have to create a function off that button. The click function and actually post that.
Or see what the
So that's not changing specific to anything to the handlebars. That was at least the form action.
It must not allow you to do all. I've only done posts from a form. I've never had a reason to do anything else on a form. So, yeah. You cannot use put from a form.
You can?
You cannot. It is invalid HTML and will be treated like an empty form tag. It doesn't. Just like if you have an empty form tag, it just refreshes the page. That's it.
yeah, we are. With
So I basically have to write the, I can still use the form, just give it an ID and just write the JQuery.
Yeah. Or figure out if Handlebars has a post tunnel, because apparently some of them have special bindings that you can use to put behind the scenes, but I don't think Handlebars does.
Oh,
That's a check.
We were talking about it during the break, probably like MySQL, you're going to use database probably. Yeah. And the, like the Roku.
Or they do what Rolando did, which is have a button with a value delete or a button with value post, and you tell the server which one you're going to do.
Yeah, you basically gotta write the JQuery and stuff, right?
I made a new form under the submit form and changed like the name of the button, and then in my post I test the request of the body coming in against the object that is being sent back against them.
And call a function that actually.
Right, so like if the name of the object coming back is add or submit, run this query. If it's delete, run this query. I just always forget. I noticed that there's like a few days that I didn't check my query. It says none. I don't know if you want me to show you. Does it matter? Like I don't know if it matters.
Is it none or none or the manual checking? I have a none that I know that I'm manual checking.
Yeah, I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, it just says none, but it doesn't count it as absent. So, like, I
had a day that I went to a Thursday class and said I was
And I know you haven't checked them, I just
Stephanie's got your back. She doesn't yell at you to constantly sign in, so.
oh, I think all the time. So like, hey, I'm an idiot. And she's like,
Well, we already know you're bad at setting things, so.
yes, very bad. Very bad. Please don't hide. Can't set very we already, it's going to be Country Finder for you. We already talked to your team about it. They know what's up.
I'll do like trains.
Give you about 5 more minutes to work on this, then we'll go over it. Oh, that guy is. Oh, yeah. He's the one. He's gone. All right. Did anyone finish? Quite a few people. That's good. Okay. Let's go ahead and go through this process together then. So this was similar to the last one we looked at together, the Tasks app. So you could have started there with a base and then kind of modified it a bit. Or you could have gone from scratch if you wanted to. So let's go from scratch real quick, kind of. Halfway scratch. So the first thing we need to do is I created a new folder. I called it unsolved. You can call it whatever you want. But we need to do npm init, right? And I'll just crush on through there because I don't really care. Does it? Just okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And if that's why just goes through that
All right, so we're gonna need 3 packages for this. We need Express and Express handlebars and MySQL. I don't think you need the -- save anymore, but I just do it as a habit. But npm install -- save and all 3 of those packages in one line. We'll add them to our beautiful package JSON and then install them. So if I go look, now I'll have them. We're good there. Awesome. What do we need first? We're gonna need a server.js file to get our server going. Now I'm gonna skip the boring stuff and boop, look at that. I'm really fast. So I'm gonna set up all my handlebars and everything Express. We go ahead and require an Express. We set up the app. We decide our port, so we use the environment variable or 8080. We set up our middleware for parsing the requests, URL encoded and JSON. We're going to go ahead and bring in Express handlebars then, right? And we're going to set the app engine equal to Express handlebars with the default layout being main. And then we're going to set the view engine to handlebars. Then we got to bring in MySQL. We have to set up our connection and we have to connect. The next boilerplate thing that we should do is get our server listening on our port. Any questions about that part? npm init, install packages, the kind of the setup stuff, right? Cool. So let's get our views set up. So first we need a views folder, and in there we're going to have an index.handlebars. And in there we also need a layouts folder, and that's going to have a main.handlebars. And the main handlebars is really pretty simple. We're just doing a basic HTML file, and then we need the triple handlebars there to say that we're going to actually be parsing some HTML, right?
Does the spacing matter for that?
No. So, index handlebars, what are we going to do? We're going to have the title, we're going to have some information about what we're doing. Oh, save your wishes. Then we need to list all of the wishes, and we need to have a form to be able to post back the information, right? So, we can just do some boilerplate garbage, nothing important there. Let's get a UL going for our list with handlebars. And remember, we need each. Each is going to be our loop, right? And then we'll just say that for all intents and purposes, the property of the data we're going to be using to render is just going to be called wishes. And then don't forget to close your each. From there, all of our wishes are going to be in an LI, a list item tag. So we can do the ID. And we can display the wish. So this is going to give us a nice dynamic list of wishes that are going to render every time we visit that page. Everyone with me so far? Let me know if you need me to slow down or anything. After that, let's have a form on there. This form is going to take in information about our wish and have a submit button that can post back to our server. This is how we're going to get new wishes to be created on our server. Nothing too crazy other than that handlebars each loop. There's nothing really too new in here. So let's tackle our server again. Let's go clean this bad boy up. Get it working. Alright, so what do we need? Well, we have it listening. The app's listening. We have our connection set up. We have our handlebar set up. Everything's good. But we need our 2 endpoints. We need a get and we need a post. Right? So we'll do our app.get. We're going to make it the root path. Oh, if Daniel's going to throw fancy new syntax in there, I am too. Alright, this is a lambda function, anonymous lambda function. You're going to see this a lot. Yeah, you want to get esoteric? We'll get esoteric. We'll make this work. This is not esoteric. We're actually going to go over this in one of the weeks. This is syntax you're going to have to use in React a lot, and in modern JavaScript. Yeah, you'll see it in Stack Overflow a lot. Knowing what this does, basically, instead of having function recres, it just has the parentheses and then an arrow. The equals, less than or greater than, whatever, equals angle bracket. Like, basically, it's these parameters pointing goes to this function body. It's an anonymous function. There's no this. This does not exist in there. If you use this, who knows what it's going to be. So it makes things a little easier. Yeah, if you have 0 parameters, you do it like this. If you have 1, you don't need the parentheses. It's kind of up to you. Basically, you're pointing the parameters to the function, yeah. Okay, so we need to connect to our database. We need to get all the wishes, and then we need to render them in handlebars. So we have a connection. We're going to query. Select star from, I probably should have showed you the schema first, but let's hope you figured it out. Select star from wishes. We're just going to get them all, right? We have another, our callback can be another anonymous function, just like the recres. So if we have an error, let's just throw, let's not continue. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about rendering that right now. And remember, geez, we have index handlebars that we want to render this data to, and we called the data wishes, not wished. So this right here should query the database, get back our wishes, all the information about the wishes, and just pump them into this index handlebars template and send it back to us. Any questions on this? Other than the weird function syntax I decided to throw in there willy-nilly to throw you off?
Yeah, we should. You're sending back the objects of data and assigning them to another object with property of
I am saying that handlebars is going to get an object with one property called wishes that equals the array of wishes. Or data, in this case.
So data comes back as an array?
It comes back as an array. If you're unsure, console log it, right? So if you
every time you select something from like a database from SQL, does that just always come back as an array?
The MySQL one will come back as an array.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, right, yeah, MySQL is an array. Okay. Comes back as an array of objects.
Yep. Alright. So now we need to post, right? We need to save this information to our database. Query is going to be, this syntax is going to be the same, but now we have an insert statement, insert into wishes. Then we need to tell it what value we're inserting. We're inserting the wish value, and then the actual data we are inserting with that question mark. Now remember, our form is submitting the wish to us through the body. We pull it out of the body. Let's clean this up a bit. So this is a more compact form. You want to keep everything in line if you do a compact form. So if you have a function, you want to make sure your closing brace closing curly brace is aligned with the opening of the function. So if this was the function keyword here, that's how I would align it. Another note about this crazy syntax, you need this arrow pointing to the function expression, right? Pointing to your curly braces. But if you try to have that arrow there with a regular function, it's going to freak out. And it's going to be like, dude, you're mixing two syntaxes, you're freaking out. So you can't do that. Okay. If error, we're just going to go ahead and throw. Otherwise, we can just do our res redirect, right? And we'll just redirect back to home. And that should take care of the bulk of the logic for us. Now the last bit we needed was the schema. So for that, all we wanted was to create a table with an auto increment ID and a varchar wish column. Then you can insert some in if you want. You don't need to. It's kind of on you. Let's run it. Make sure it works. We're connected. Nice. Looking good. Here's all the wishes right here. This is what they come back in MySQL. Come back from is in MySQL. Boom, nice. And we see our new one. Nice. Looking good. You have a question, Rolando?
Yeah, you're passing the in your debt when you're doing the printing of the page.
Yeah. Like in here?
No, on the other side. You're passing handlebars an object, right?
Yes. This is an object, a random object. I'm giving handlebars.
Yeah. And so how are you're passing an object with an array inside, and then that array has more objects inside.
Yep.
So how does it know that to handle the array?
Because we're telling it each. We're telling it it's an array.
Telling it to move through the array and pull out those objects.
Pull out
inside
these
it.
properties, yeah, the ID and the wish.
So you send the object with the array in it, and then it loops through that array and pulls up.
Yep, so we're naming it wishes. And right here we're saying, hey, take the wishes, they're going to be an array, loop over each one, and pull the ID and the wish out of each wish. Which we can see, each item that comes in this array has an ID and a wish. Make sense?
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions on any of this? Want a refresher on anything? What? We're just going to talk about that in the next exercise. So, no, not right now. In like 30 seconds. So, everyone chill. We'll get to the delete in a second, okay? Jeez.
In 7, they use this dot ID.
Yes.
So if like we have tabs or lists, right?
No. I don't know if there's a reason why you would need to use this. There might be some weird underlying reason why it might be preferable in some cases, but usually no. There's not going to be a preferable way. Do you want to type this every time? Then go nuts. All right. If one of the TAs could slack out that solution, that'd be awesome. Okay. So let's look at putting and deleting. So we've got get and post. We've done get and post all over the place, so we're kind of familiar with those now. Get, post, great, they're boring. Let's go ahead and look at how we can do a put and a delete because they're a little bit more challenging. It requires at least JavaScript, most likely jQuery, right? If we want to do it properly. So let me go ahead and open up the next exercise. Alright, so I have another schema here that I'll do it anyway and have like 50 billion random databases that don't do anything for me. Okay, what do we got? This time, we're going to play around with puts and deletes. And we're going to see what they look like. So, from a server standpoint, they don't look a whole lot different. They really don't. So, one significant difference is with the get and the post. Well, with post specifically, we don't usually have variable parameters. Sometimes you will. You might have a good reason. But usually, in terms of the route, we don't have any parameters, right? So none of the crazy colon whatever. With a get, it's possible. You could want to get a specific item. You could want to get all the items. So it depends. But when you're just getting data, it's not a big deal. With a put, though, and a delete, almost always, if you're designing your API to be truly RESTful, you will have some sort of variable. Because if your put is really just an update, like it's supposed to be, you need to know what you're updating, right? Unless you, I guess, have a bulk update on everything, but that's pretty rare. So in this case, we might have an ID that we want to specify the to-do we want to update, or the wish we want to update, or whatever. What we're going to do in there is just call an update function, an update statement in our MySQL server. Nothing too crazy, right? So this is just, we get this put, we happen to learn, we happen to decide from that URL, that path, what the ID is we're going to update, right? And we give it the data in the request that we're updating. In this case, it's something called the plan. We're updating the plan when we call this put. It does all that fun stuff. Everything's well and good. There's this slight difference here, which we'll go over in a second. But at the end of the day, we get a 200 status and an end. But with the post, we were doing redirects. With the get, we're returning HTML. But with this put, we're just returning a status code. So remember, put and delete, you can't do them directly from a form. So you can't do them directly from HTML. You need JavaScript or jQuery intervention to actually do these things. So with that being said, getting back HTML or getting a redirect makes no sense. What makes the most sense is just to say, okay, well, I guess it happened, right? And that's basically what we're saying. Res status 200 right there is just saying, okay, everything happened okay. Good for you. That's it. Right here, instead of doing the throw, this is how you can more gracefully handle these problems that occur. So we run into an error when we're updating. Instead of throwing or just destroying our server, we can send a 500 back and say something really bad happened. We don't know what it is, but that sucks. And your client can decide what to do with that information. And in this case, we're saying we updated nothing. The result that comes back from MySQL will have this changed rows number on it, and basically it's you get back an empty array, right? If you were to do a get, say, well, we didn't update anything, so sorry, a 404 not found. We didn't find any records. So again, your client can handle that. It'll get a 404 back in its response, and it can say, oh, 404 not found, and then you can display to the user, hey, we couldn't find that to do. What are you trying to update? So this is very much more API-only type code, right? Because obviously you can't call it directly from HTML. We already discussed that, so there's not a lot of HTML interaction you're going to have to do. You could redirect from here if you wanted to. Redirect to that to-do that you just updated. Redirect to like a view page or something, you know, so you can view the data you just updated, but you don't have to. You can just send back information and let your client handle it. Yeah, you updated it. Good. Delete is very similar. So again, we have to tell the server what we are deleting. Now, you can technically pass a body in with your delete, but it's best practice really not to, I think, because you're deleting something specific. So if you just have a variable in your route, you can tell it what to delete. In this case, I'm deleting to-do with ID of whatever I pass into the path, right? From there, we can call our delete statement in SQL. We just tell it what the ID is. Again, we have the similar thing with the put. If we have an error, we're just going to return a 500, tell the client that sucks. If we can't delete anything, if we have 0 affected rows, return to 404. We didn't find anything to delete. That sucks. Or if we deleted something, great. A-OK, we deleted something. From a handlebars perspective, what does this look like? So from here, we have these to-dos. We can go ahead and we set up these to-dos. So we'll go through each one, or plans, or whatever. Let's see what the SQL schema. Okay, so they're plans. They have an ID and a plan. Not a whole lot to them. So we load all the plans. We'll go through each one. We'll create this nice plan that's going to have the ID dot the plan. And I'll show you this in a moment. But we do something different here. We have a button we're also creating in that list that has a data attribute. Now, what's special about those again? We can put whatever we want in a data attribute, right? If it starts with data dash, it's ours for the taking. Do whatever you want. It's not a standard HTML attribute anymore. So in this case, we're storing the plan ID. You could just call it ID, whatever. We're actually injecting it right into the attribute. Handlebars lets you put this data wherever you want in that HTML file. So in this case, we're literally assigning the value to the attribute, the ID. And then we give it a class, whatever, for styling. And hey, it says delete the plan. Okay, that's interesting. So down here, here's that same class, del plan, right? When you click on a del plan, it's actually pulling the plan ID from that button that you clicked. So this is back to the jQuery basics, right? Pulling information out of the attributes. You can create the path that you're going to call the delete on from that ID. You just tell Ajax, hey, this is a delete function. And then in your then, if all was hunky-dory and you get this then function, then you deleted something. Okay, great. We're done. Notice that this click does not need prevent default. It is not in a form. It is not a submit button. It does not need to prevent default. It won't refresh the page on default. So let's look at the rest of the HTML. Okay, so we've got that list. We can delete. Now we have create a plan. This is just our form. This is just going to call our post. Nothing crazy here. Here's the update plan. Now update plan is going to show each of the plans. You'll be able to select the plan you want to update, and then you'll be able to change the plan text here. And then we have this other submit button, update plan. So this is pretty complex, right? So we actually have a select. Select is what? That drop down, right? You click on it and you get this drop down of all the items. So we're dynamically generating all the options in a drop down with that each tag and handlebars. This shows us just what handlebars can do. Literally anything. It's literally putting raw HTML right there in that file. So anything you could devise with raw HTML, you can devise with handlebars. We can assign the values, the ID, we can assign the plan, right? You select the one, you change what the plan is, hit update plan. So what does update plan do? Let's skip create plan real quick. Update plan has an on submit. It was in a form, so it needs the event prevent default for sure. We can literally pull the ID out of the option that we have selected, right? So name ID, we can grab the value from it. So let's go ahead and look up here. The select is named ID, so we're pulling from the select the value that's been selected. So that's whatever option has been selected, right? That's what that does. We can create a JSON. We're going to create an object that's going to be turned into JSON. So this is pretty dense syntax right here. It's basically saying in the update plan form, and whatever has the update plan ID, grab the element that has the name equal to plan, grab its value. So that's going to be that text area right up here. Plan, it's grabbing the value of that and just dumping it into this object. So we're going to have an updated plan with one value, property plan, that's going to have a string value of your new plan text. Then again, we have the ID. We can create the route right here dynamically. Tell it it's a put. Give it the data that we're updating. All as well as in good, we can go ahead and just reload the page. That's what location reload does. It'll reload the page. Right? Last one was created plan. So create a plan is just a simple form. You'll notice it doesn't have the method post on this one, because we're doing it with jQuery. Very similar to how we do the updated plan. We just go ahead, event prevent default. We don't want to refresh the page. We'll do it ourselves later. We create this new plan object by pulling the new plan text out of the form and assigning it to the plan property. We can just do a post to the to-dos. I don't know why they call it to-dos. I think that was a typo. They forgot to change that. Probably should be plan. What can you do? They're all to-dos, I guess, but they should be plan. You give it the new data, tell it it's post. You can reload the page when it's done. So what does this look like in practice really quick before we ask questions? Don't forget the npm install. It's a good one. Lesson learned. Oh my gosh, don't forget to change your database information. My lord. Yeah, this stuff. This boilerplate stuff. Don't forget to do it. Oof, okay. I already did the schema. I did it before the exercise, so I don't want to hear it. Alright.
The JavaScript does have to-dos as the...
Does it? Okay, so we have our plan. So, delete plan. Notice it's gone. Refresh the page. So remember, delete plan, if I go back, whoop, on the server here, is going to come in, it's going to call to this to-dos route, it's going to delete from the plans where the ID equals whatever we supply from that params object. If everything's good, we're going to get a 200 status back. If we get that 200 status back, it's going to call into the then function. If you get any other, if you get the 404 or the 500, it'll actually call into a different function that represents the failure. So here, it just says, cool, we deleted, and it refreshes the page. So I won't actually be able to see that it says, cool, we deleted, but it did. So if we want to create a plan, this is my new plan. Save the plan, refreshes the page. We can see in handlebars, we are going through all of the plans, right? And we're filling them into this drop down right here, so you can select which one you want to update. This is my new plan v2. Right? Update plan, boom. Refreshes the page. Okay, it's kind of fast. We went through it real quick. Are there questions on this code? It's a little bit more dense.
What's the ID 2?
It's off the database.
Because the database.
It's off the database auto increment.
But you deleted 1.
It doesn't
Right.
matter.
But the next time you add something to the database, it will not use the same primary key that was already. You
It's
can
always
see
gonna
auto
be
incrementing upwards forever.
Yep. Auto increment continues to auto increment, and it won't stop.
Even if there's nothing at that ID.
Nope, and you can't reset it. There's no way to do it. So there might be some weird obscure way to do it, but it's probably dangerous and you shouldn't. Otherwise you have to take all the data and move it to a new table with a fresh auto increment. So yeah, that's why. It'll be random numbers. You'll eventually get to crazy numbers, but you'll never get it back again.
Write a script to like move all the data over and then delete you again.
The glory days of having one is the first ID. It doesn't happen that often. Any other questions on this code? I know it's a lot. It's very dense. It shows just how much you can do with handlebars if you weren't quite aware of that yet. Yeah.
Instead of using .ajax, could you change that to $post?
If you can get it to work, yeah. I don't know if Garrett ever figured out what his problem was, but so many. Okay, well, probably wasn't just that then. Yeah, I mean, as long as you have a way to post, if you want to use the fetch API instead of Ajax, do that. You technically don't need jQuery for any of this stuff. You can do it with all raw JavaScript and the fetch API. It's just a little bit more code.
Well, if you tried to, would it be possible to take all that script data in the index and put it in its own file?
Absolutely, you can put it in its own JavaScript file, but then you have to load that script file.
Right.
But yeah.
I tried doing that one time, but it didn't
Yeah, with handlebars, it's a little different because you have to do the pathing properly, and stuff can get kind of weird. But you can absolutely do it. You could just put it in your main layout, right? So you could put it here after the body. But yep, it's just HTML. So if you know how that's all working, and you have an assets folder with like static assets, remember in Express you have to tell it these are my static files, so it can find them, because these views are not static files; they're dynamically generated, so they don't count as those. Any other questions on this code? Cool. This is activity number 9. Feel free to reference it for the next activity. You're supposed to get 15 minutes to look at it, but we really only have 30 minutes left in class, and the last activity is going to take a while. So I took a while on this. So we're going to do activity 10 instead, which is very similar to this. You're going to be creating your own full web application that allows you to get, put, post, and delete, right? So it's going to be quite a lot of work with it. So work in groups. I'll give you about 23, 24 minutes to work on it, and then we'll go over it, see what we got, and go from there. What? The instructions? What? I'll post them in Slack. How about that? And then I'll put them on the board or on the TVs. Okay, they're in Slack.
Got that sexy restaurant with it.
He's gonna change the music, right?
Fast and Furious 1 through 12. Those are the movies you pick.
I mean, they're easy to remember. It's just, you have to do save all, and then obviously you can pick your bar and whatever. Save all, not search or that home. What area do you need? Did you do encampment today?
I think it's like 50 plus now. This isn't even right thing. I'm gonna erase that, oh yeah, I erased that process.mv because I thought it might be something else that's coming back. And then I just made it GUI. Why did it keep going slash U? Select everything. Yeah, everything from the release table. And then just render kind of like the same as the last one. I just did the old information. There's not even any error there, isn't it?
Okay. How are we all doing? This was a tough one. This is very involved. If anything, it had a lot of work. Are there specific parts that people struggled on the most that they'd like to get covered? Because a lot of it's boilerplate that we've seen a few times, so I'd like to focus on things we haven't, like the put and the delete, right? So, from the server perspective, I think the server perspective of the put and delete are probably easier than the jQuery HTML side. That's my guess. No one has an opinion, so I guess I don't know. So for your put, since we're worrying about updating movies, we have to pick the ID of the movie that we want to update. We can go ahead and pull that out of our params object. We can also pull information about the movie. So in this case, we're just kind of updating the movie's name. It just references the movie value, or you could have called it something else. It just has to come from a form with some name on the input tag. And then really the important one was this, right? If you had an error, probably return a 500. Otherwise, you could return a 200 or a 204 or something if you didn't want to check for changed rows. This one's not super important, but it is good response from the server. It makes it good on the client. So for the delete, we pull the ID from the route again, and we're just deleting the movie with that ID, right? So here's where we use the ID from the route. If we deleted it, we'll send back a 200. Otherwise, we'll send back a potential error status code. So from the index handlebars, this is where things are wacky, right? We want to loop through each movie first. That's the first thing, to display them. Simple enough. And then we can create some sort of button or something to allow us to reference this movie when we eventually delete them. Does it need to be a button? It could be a link with a checkbox, I guess. It's really kind of up to you. You just need some way to be able to reference this movie when you delete it. Let's add a form for creating the movie. This is just going to have one text area with movie. We'll do the same with a form for updating the movie. In this case, they cheated. and they just had an input where you could place the ID of the one you wanted to update. So if it doesn't exist, you're going to get a 400 back. You'll never get that. The then function should never fire, or if it does fire, you're going to reload your page, but nothing's going to have changed. So, whatever. So for deleting a movie, remember up here we have a class del movie, so all of the del movie buttons are simply going to allow us to pull the movie ID off of the button that was pressed, create the route towards the for the specific movie, tell Ajax it's a delete type, reload the page. Pretty straightforward there. The hard part is remembering that you got to get information from jQuery. You have to then build this route. Like, there's a lot going on, even though each individual piece seems rather simple. Putting it all together, orchestrating it isn't as easy. For the add movie, this is your typical form. So we need our prevent default in there. We can get information about the movie from the input. So again, this crazy syntax finds the element that has the ID add movie, which is that form. And then from there, it finds the input with the name movie, which is a text area input. And then we just get the val, we trim it, so the movie name isn't too complex. It doesn't have much of space, and it's just full of garbage. Then we just do a simple post with that data through Ajax, reload the page when it's saved. Update movie, also form. Make sure you event prevent default. Pull the information related to the ID off of the element with the ID name. Pull the information about the movie off of the element with the movie name. Create the URL dynamically based off of that ID. Do a put. Pass in the data. Reload the page. Anyone have questions on this stuff? Chris, you put your hands up right when I said that. It was good timing. Anyone have questions on this? Cool, we'll Slack out the solution. That's all we got today. So feel free to hang out if you want to. If you have questions, otherwise go home.
So the reason for this go and connect it to the MySQL.
You can just drop it into the MySQL workbench and execute it directly.
Yeah, but you always have to execute it. And
Yes.
do that.
Yeah, you're going to need to execute the SQL first, or you won't have any data to work with.
I was just trying to see like a faster. You always have to run MySQL.
Stephanie, could you Slack out that solution, please? 10.
They should have the weights, right?
I only have 5 gigs, I'm using up 1 that I
So
don't
you can
need.
use any computer and you can install something like
What?
Like, you know how when you write for a computer, you're running VS Code